Um, I always feel a little shy when somebody says wisdom. Um, I really appreciate your talking about the fear that may be kind of widespread by the time you all are looking at this. Um, and I know that facing something that is frightening, you can go through a lot of different feelings and they can change day by day. You can be angry one day, you can be frightened, depressed, you can be optimistic. It's so many different things. Uh, and what I've noticed, how can I say, I wasn't thinking to say this, but the reason we're doing this now rather than in December is I have tumors in my brain and they're going to be doing a biopsy this coming week to find out what that is. And I noticed I get most depressed when I see only that horizon. I see that one thing that all this is leading up to. And I get more optimistic when I look at the future past that on the other side of it. When I see that there is a future and what it is I want to be doing and so on. So I want to kind of step back from the scary stuff and think a bit about the kind of longer range, bigger picture, that kind of thing. I want to support something of confidence and optimism in you, even while you're being realistic about what may lie ahead. So um, I've strung together a few thoughts. First thing that came to mind is the British writer Lewis Carroll in his book Alice in Wonderland and Alice Through the Looking Glass, the mirror. And at some point she steps through the mirror. And this is the topic of thresholds, historic, fateful moments in history where collectively people, and now all of us, step across a threshold and we're in a different world. And that's been happening since 3/4 of the way through the 20th century. We are stepping into a different world. And when you step through the looking glass across these immense thresholds, things that you used to count on doing and you knew what they would produce, they don't work that way anymore. It doesn't pay off anymore. And when people do have a sense of what would be the most realistic thing to do, it doesn't seem really thinkable or imaginable. It seems too out there or utopian or something of that nature. When you think about what are the organizing principles of living every day, the old ones are clear to us. I know if I go to the pharmacy, I give them money or card or something and they give me what I want. Same with the supermarket. There are things like that are so concrete, we all know. We rely on them. But the new things on this side of the threshold are missing. It's this great blankness. What is the world to become? And a lot of the world doesn't really want to change all that much. So the second thing I want to talk about is there are people who do want big change because the world as it is isn't all that much an object of affection. In fact, they hate it and have hated it for quite some time and maybe didn't even know it until somebody gave voice to that and said, you know what, it's okay to think that and feel it and to say it. They hate it and they feel that the big changes they would need cannot possibly happen unless the decks are cleared. The structures that exist have to be wiped aside, destroyed. So that's Steve Bannon. That's what he was about. He was one of those figures that's destroy what is to make a space for what could be to be born. It reminds me also of Shiva's two things, creation on one side and destruction on the other. As the human mind, we destroy and create, destroy and create. And that reminded me of things that Evelyn wrote about a long time ago about uh, in times of great change, when everything is unsettled, humiliation entrepreneurs can speak to those who have felt this kind of just bitterness about the world as it is. It's never going to be good to them, and can mobilize that. Eric Hoffer wrote about that in The True Believer, how these mass movements depend on hating the world as it is and finding an evil to focus on and a distant future to rally to. And in the course of that, being willing to sacrifice anything and everything of the present, including your own life, right? Versus, as Evelyn said, what we needed was a coalition, a global coalition of moderates, of people who aren't swept away with feelings, to kind of actually make some real changes that people would appreciate, that make life more reliable and workable for everybody. Um, I have noticed with this thing that I'm facing, what really makes a difference in terms of how I feel about it, these moments when somebody is kind in an empowering way. And I think we need as the conference theme, a pandemic of empowering kindness, so that whoever you are or whoever you're dealing with, and the people who most want to tear everything down, um, they need to be empowered with kindness. There's a book I just saw on the Holocaust, and the dedication is to all the people who hate Jews and feel they can save the world by killing all the Jews. And then it says, may you have life-changing experiences and become great champions of human dignity. What a wonderful thing, what a wonderful thing to wish that for each other. Um, so, the problem with moderates that Hoffer points out is they often don't speak to feelings and to the need for hope. So there is a need for a sense of inspiration, for something new that is the world that can be, a kind of falling in love with that. So I wanted to read something from a book by Vincent Bevins, going back a ways to the 1950s. So I'll read a little bit. My apologies, but didn't memorize it. This is about the third world, which was everyone else, not the first world or the second world, but everyone else, the vast majority of the world's population. That term, the third world, was coined in the early 1950s, and originally all of its connotations were positive. When the leaders of the new nation states took up the term, they spoke it with pride. It contained a dream of a better future in which the world's downtrodden and enslaved masses would take control of their own destiny. Third did not mean third rate, but something more like the third and final act. The first group of rich white countries had their crack at creating the world, as did the second, the communists. And this was the new movement, full of energy and potential, just waiting to be unleashed. For much of the planet, the third world was not a category, it was a movement. Let's see. All of these countries had inherited economies that were far, far poorer than those in the first world. Centuries of slavery and brutal exploitation had left them to fend for themselves and decide how they would try to forge a path to independence and prosperity. And then I'll read just one more thing. He interviewed a number of people for this book, and this is Francisca. In 1951, she and her family had fled Indonesia, sailed around Africa, across the Atlantic to Brazil, which they had heard would be a wonderful new world. Well, they got there, and 2 years later, Brazil became a military dictatorship. So in 1951, she's 24 years old, and they've come back to Indonesia. And he describes how hard life was. Uh, she didn't mind any of this one bit. Like so many other Indonesians, she was overcome with excitement. After hundreds of years of exploitation and slavery, she had her own country, and it was just 1 year old. Think about it, 1 year old, how amazing. As she made her way across town every day, she didn't think about the comfortable life she had given up. The only thing she cared about was that she was building up Indonesia from nothing. Quote, "We have to live life to the utmost to do everything we can when you're working toward a cause like this, one that's so much bigger than you, it hardly feels like work at all." So in the midst of the sea of unsettledness, of nobody knowing how to be a world in these new times, some people turn to hate because there is no future they envision that they can make. Some people, and what's missing is that sense of hope, that inspiration that's realistic, right? Of that you could fall in love with, right? So I used to talk about the need for vision. I don't talk about that anymore. What I talk about is the need for a realization of the conditions we're in and of what we could be together, that we would actually like better. That realization. And the realization has to do with this global thing that kind of got thrown away. Um, that there's that we're all here now. 8 billion of us, 197 countries, some real countries, some wanting to be countries, and then they get in, and maybe not wanting to be countries, but they get insulted, and they get told you're failing states. Well, maybe, or maybe they're just being something different. But all of us are here now. So then there's this question, what can we be to each other? What can we be together? And we haven't realized that it would work better to think of all of us together than to keep thinking of us over here and us over there and us over there. It's that sense that we're still us locally. We're still the country we are, we're still the people we are, but we're also in a larger identity of all of us on the planet making a life together. So many countries, so many peoples making a life together, a life that works for all of us, a life that we all agree, we all really feel, honestly, is fair and just, and that it works. And we can rely on it. We can rely on each other. Nobody is going to put it to us in some destructive way. A life we can actually treasure, cherish, and be really happy to hand on to our children, to grow up into and to hand on to their children, because it's so good for everybody. Um, so again, this is not about relating to some distant future out there while we dislike what's going on here, or we love it and we just keep doing it. It's about the realization about being present right here as things are, as all of us are here and now. And what is it practically we can do with each other? What can we do? What kind of listening can we do with each other? What kind of talking with each other that would make things here and now a bit better? Because a bit better year after year is a lot better pretty quickly. So we have up here such a powerhouse of thought and creativity. We are so imaginative. So I wanted to mention Alan Lichtman's book. It's a little novel of sorts, Einstein's Dream. dreams. So it's this little made up thing of Einstein trying to figure out time, before he had relativity. And these little chapters, like 3 pages long. What if time is this way? What would the world be like? So he spends, it's really playful and fun, worth reading. Um, we have this great capacity to imagine and invent what world we are. But there's such limitations we've kind of inherited in terrible ways. So after World War I, there was a League of Nations, but fundamentally, the leaders of the different governments didn't get together and say, that was horrible. Let's never do that again. Let's figure out what we were thinking and what we did that screwed everything up so badly and change it all so that we're actually having everybody, people, the people in our countries and peoples and other, we all are actually having a good time living together on this planet. They could have done that, but they didn't. Could have done that after World War II. They made the United Nations. This was great. This was wonderful. It's a good thing that that was done. But they did not get together, Harry Truman and Joe Stalin and all the rest of them, and say, what is it we were thinking that produced all that? Where did we go wrong? How can we change those things and do it differently? So everybody, it's like an outdoor cafe. We're all having a good time together. We're all able to love our families, our children, each other more readily than not, because our historical circumstances aren't disrupting life by killing people in the hundreds of millions. They didn't do that. Sorry. Uh, and why not? Because standing behind this very creative mind is the pre-human brain that's shared with so many other species, right? And it has its own characters, so to speak, each of whom has its own agenda for what to turn this into. So there's the predator-prey part of our brains that's really ready to, no matter what you come up with, no matter what other, it's all about destruction. It's all about killing. It's all about sadism and being the object of sadism and torture and all this. That's what it will turn anything into. Or another part will turn anything into dominance and submission, getting what the dominator wants at the expense of the other. And this is how you know a predator is afoot. If after the encounter, the other one is weaker or in some way dead, their reputation is killed, their career is over, their life opportunities are gone, they are ill because of something that wasn't tended to, or they're imprisoned, or their soul has died, or they're physically just dead because the dominator passed this way. That's predation afoot in the world. But we also have, in common with mammals and primates, we have the capacities for attachment. Attachment looks at whatever's going on and uses all this imagination and, it's better that we're together. I know life will be better because you're here. And you know life will be better because I'm here. And how do you do that? How do they know life will be better because we're here? How do they know that? Why would they know that? That's something to really conjure with because it makes all the difference. And the same in reverse. And there's also nurturing. If you're down at this moment, what can we do to provide or support your own resourcefulness or provide you with resources so you get back on your feet? But then you take it from there. Every culture has to make its own world in its own way. We like to say, well, we're all humans, so we have a lot in common. That's true. But we're also very different. I was just hearing about a culture that has no future and no past. Their time is, they don't experience that. They have the present, right? We have mindfulness workshops aspiring to try to be like that. Cultures are so very, very different. We're also very, very different. So what does it mean to be on this planet together? This notion that the biggest and most powerful and most technologically advanced should be the teachers of the rest is so destructive. That is the dominator and the predator on the move, thinking all the while, I'm doing good for people. I'm doing good for the world. I'm being helpful. Unfortunately, it violates the needs of other cultures to invent the world out of their own experience, out of the centuries and millennia of their experience. And if they find something that you're doing interesting, that's great. And you do have things that you know that they don't. They have things that they know you don't, and you cannot figure out. For instance, when it comes to, I'm trying to think of the word for that alternative, permaculture. You plant all these different kinds of food together and they support each other's life and it's more productive and less greenhouse gases and all this stuff. You just try to do that. You try to find a consultant who has that label, who actually can teach you to do that. And you know why you can't? Because the only way people can do that is that they've been doing it for centuries at least, and they actually have seen what things work together and what things don't. You don't know, you haven't done it, you don't even know where to begin. They know, right? We can learn from each other. We are all in the face of the great mystery of these times and of what it means to be human. We are all kind of faced with that. And to realize whatever it takes to reach a point in your life when you're no longer cocky and confident and you just don't know what you're going to do next. Then you've joined the club of humankind where there's a lot we can be confident about, a lot we can trust in, but there's a lot we just don't know. And that makes us fellow human travelers in trying to figure out humanness and how best to do it together and how best to be a world together. And that's priceless. So there is this sense that is yet to be born of what it means to be all of us, what that really means concretely. And I want to add one other kind of instinctual thing, and that's the erotic. That's sort of falling in love with, it's sensual, it's about physical beauty, it's about romantic love, it's all those things. And that kind of connects us into the larger universe in a way we don't usually talk about. The universe, the cosmos, is a very strange kind of whatever it is. On the one hand, it loves explosions. It loves making things go bang. It loves making galaxies collide and all this stuff. And out of those collisions, it creates new things. So the universe knows how to use boom to create new things. But in the midst of all of that gigantic stuff, it somehow has managed to create such delicacy as the world of life that we inhabit. The trees, the leaves, the flowers, the fruits, the vegetable, whatever it is that grows wherever you are, the animals wherever you are, and us. Such delicate, fragile, and the richness of all of this. There's just the magnificent diversity of life, and life keeps making more and more diversity. So David Attenborough has this new thing out now. It's his last video. It's his witness statement. And the first third of it is just this journey through the richness of a life. And we're part of that. And when we fall in love, we're part of this whole love affair that is life itself. We're part of life and its mysterious love affair with existence. So we are in very unsettled times. Very harsh times likely lie ahead with climate destabilization and so on. But like me and my biopsy, it's important to look realistically at what lies ahead and to deal with it. But it also may be helpful to look past that to the future on the other side of that. Not what we're going to make out of the 21st century, but what will be made of the 22nd century, the one we will not see. That we're doing the groundwork for what we will not see. And to have in mind the goodness that can be going forward, the goodness that needs to go forward, and the fundamental decency in the hearts and minds of so many people all around the world. And that's what needs to get tapped. And I understand governments and big business, you are caught in the institutions that you are leading. They are like traps that are very hard to escape. They lock you in. The people lock you in if you try to be different. Your competitors lock you in if you try to be different. It is extremely hard to be a leader of hope for the globe, for everybody, to connect with other leaders of hope and dignity and goodness. And we, the ordinary people of the world, have to be willing to support our leaders who take that daring, who dare to try to be better and to try to do the world better. We need to support them because they need our support, and we need to not go along with the impulse to destroy. We need to support the birth of better. Thank you.